Hello, welcome back to another video on astrology. This video is a continuation of the series Retrograde Planets, which I started recently, and I also conducted a poll to find out what should be the topic for my next video, and most of you had answered that you wanted more information on retrograde planets. The reason for looking out for more information on retrograde planets is that each time you look up a website or watch a video looking for more information on what exactly do you do with retrograde planets, you end up a little maybe sometimes more confused, or maybe you thought that there is something more to it, but it was not addressed to. But each video I think must have contributed to some extra knowledge of retrograde planets, and in this video I would like to add in my share of not the confusion part, but the information part. People can speculate a lot about retrograde planets, that is basically their right, because you have common sense, you have your own intellect and whatever you call as logic. The most dependable method is definitely referring to some ancient textbooks, and should be really ancient. Just because it is written in Sanskrit does not mean that it is very authentic, it has to be also very ancient. The reason for that is the ancient people had extraordinary mental abilities beyond the normal common sense or logic. They were actually the founders of what we call as Indian predictive astrology. So, we better look at astrology from what they had to say when compared to the modern astrologers. Let us start with the most fundamental information on retrograde planets, which might have been the seed for maybe people inventing their own rules or thinking about retrograde planets in a very different way. The first one comes from Maharshi Parasara. Of course, it comes from Maharshi Parasara's text, Brihat Parasara Hora Sastra, and you will find there is a line. I will be in post. I will be adding the references on this side. I will be adding it. So, the first rule is like this: a sign consists of 30 degrees, and Maharshi Parasara says divided into 3 parts, and each part, if you divide it into 3 parts, each part is now called as a drekkana, and you have a separate drekkana chart just to know where in which part of the sign the planet is. So, that is another way of using a divisional chart, if you know the mathematics of a divisional chart. If the planet is in the first part of the Rashi, which is the first 10 degrees, Maharshi Parasara expects the planet to manifest its energies during the first 1/3 of its period. It might be a Mahadasha, it might be Antardasha, or it might even be a Pratyanta. Whatever be the length of the period, it does not matter. It is always, you have to take the entire period and divide it into 3 parts, matching the 3 subdivisions of drekkana. And then Maharshi Parasara says, if the planet is in the middle, then the effects of that particular planet or the expected results of that planet will happen during the middle portion of the period. And if the planet is in the last drekkana, the result will be you will get the result of that planet during the last 1/3 of the planetary period. So, this is as simple as it is. Then he says, if the planet is retrograde, reverse the order. So, this reversing the order is the most important aspect of a retrograde planet as far as Maharshi Parasara is concerned. So, this is the first takeaway of this video. Let us take Jupiter is here, and we do not know where it is. So, this is the starting point, and somewhere here will be the 10th degree, and maybe here the 20th degree. You can keep it like this. So, 0 to 10, 10 to 20, and 20 to 30. Now, if Jupiter were to be here, which means it will be in the first 1/3 of the sign, the result of this planet, whatever is the result, depends on the lagna. You will have to find out what are the houses that Jupiter owns. If it is Tula lagna, then Jupiter is the lord of the 6th house and also the lord of the 3rd house, but it is placed in the 10th in exaltation. So, Jupiter can be in the first one third, which is 0 to 10 degrees, or it might be in the middle, or it might be at the end. So, depending upon this, if it is here, it will give the results during its first one third of its period. If it is in the middle, it will give in the middle portion of the dasha or antardasha or pratyantar. If it is here, it will give in the last one third. If the planet is retrograde, because usually retrograde planets are marked like this in bracket, or you might find an R. So, if it is like this, then the result of this planet will come as though it is here. So, I hope you have understood this part of it before we go on to the next. So, you find the retrograde planet is a vital information on timing an event. This is the most important aspect of a retrograde planet. Then the next one is that in the previous episode of this series, I have actually shown a bow and an arrow, and I said that when the arrow is pulled back, the arrow gets loaded with a lot of energy. It becomes a potential, maybe for the good or for the bad. It will actually be, for example, a warrior might use it for good purpose, a thief might use it for a bad purpose. As usual in astrology, you cannot say that something is good or bad without looking at its function, the function of a planet, which is why even though we have Jupiter is a benefic and Venus is a benefic, or a waxing moon is a benefic, or a unafflicted Mercury is a benefic, we have all those rules. In spite of that, why do we have a separate set of rules for functional benefic and functional malefic? So, the confusion is not about retrograde planets, it is the confusion about not able to understand what a planet means. For example, in India, when something good happens to a person, someone buys a Benz car or a BMW car, those who know little of astrology, they will say maybe he is going through his Venus dasha, he is going through his Shukra Mahadasha. So, Shukra is such a giver of fantastic results, that is what most people think, because it is a planet of enjoyment. On the other hand, if you do a research, you will find that for some people, Venus Mahadasha or Venus Antardasha has been a nightmare, and the reason for that is Venus may have owned very bad houses, which is possible for a Sagittarius ascendant person, and so what is normally expected of Venus, always giving good results, that does not happen, and instead the opposite happens. So, there is nothing special about the confusion about retrograde planets. The confusion is always there with regard to even planets that are direct. So, the bottom line is, if you want to know if this arrow or a gun in my hand, you do not know for what it could be used. For an IPS officer or a police officer, it could be used for giving justice to the world. For a terrorist, the same gun can do a lot of damage to the world. So, it is always based on the function of a retrograde planet. If you expect something to happen or something to manifest out of a planet, then you will have to first ascertain whether it is a malefic or a benefic by function, not by nature. So, a functional malefic, if retrograde, can gather a lot more strength to do the harm, to do more harm, whereas a functional benefic, which is retrograde, can give lot of energy to the auspicious work that the planet is supposed to do or expected to do in your horoscope. So, this is another way of looking at the retrograde planets. Jupiter debilitated, but retrograde, it acts like an exalted planet. How much truth is there in such a statement? Does Maharshi Parasara approve of this? So, let us to understand this, we need to go back to the Shadbala calculation method, where you will be told that if a planet is debilitated, it has got 0 Virupas out of the 60 points allotted to a planet if it is exalted. Because a planet is debilitated, it is like having 0, and then if a planet is retrograde, we are supposed to give 60 out of 60 for a planet. So, even though the planet is debilitated, because it is retrograde, it got back the 60 marks that it lost because of its debilitation. So, it is very obvious that even Maharshi Parasara indirectly accepted that a debilitated planet can act like an exalted planet, not exactly in terms of mood, but in terms of its strength, that if it is retrograde, it can actually become stronger and you do not have to bother about its debilitation as much. In astrology, we always think the converse is also true. For example, if a planet is exalted and then retrograde, we expect it to act like a debilitated planet, which is not supported by Maharshi Parasara. So, the confusion happened because somewhere down the line an astrologer used his own common sense and figured out that there is some reversal that is happening. So, if it is exalted, then the reverse must happen, that is it will act like a debilitated planet. So, that is not true. For example, if a planet as in this case is exalted, and if it is retrograde, you will be told that this planet is going to act like a debilitated planet. This person is very much interested in publication, and that too he only publishes things from the ancient literature, something to do about the good of the world, and that you will always find from Sage Bhrigu's textbook that if Jupiter is in the 10th, the profession will be dharmika, which means not exactly religious, but it will be a very nice profession, and the person be inclined to follow gurus, get attracted to gurus, and share the knowledge of the ancient wisdom to the world through publications, because Jupiter is the main graha for publication and books. So, you find it is already working. If it was it acts like debilitated, then the person will not be interested in these things. He has already composed a lot of audios, devotional audios, audio songs and music, Ganapati and all the gods of Hinduism. All that he has been doing in a very big way, and that too almost non-profit. He is not interested in the profit side, he is very much interested in the aspect of sharing this kind of wisdom to people. So, as I said in the beginning of this video, after learning so many rules, you will have to test it out and then look out and check for yourself whether the rule works or not. In case it does not work, do not question the most fundamental classical beliefs of astrology. You will have to check out if there is something else which went wrong. For example, if you introduce Rahu here, then things will change dramatically. Now, Jupiter is spoiled by Rahu and you will not get the expected result. In fact, you will get the opposite results. Now, this idea that planet will reverse its role when malefics influence the planet, especially opposite, especially planets that are opposite like this, is not my idea. It is a very ancient idea, and Sage Bhrigu used it extensively in the book where he deals with the planets placed in different houses. The confusion arises because of our inability to understand the various permutation combinations of astrology, and so we think that there is not enough information on retrograde planets, and so we do not know what to do with it. Another way of looking at retrograde planet is it is actually part of Shadbala. That is a very important thing you should know. In Shadbala, you have 6 types of strength, and there is one type of strength which is called the Jeshta Bala, and Jeshta Bala is basically a strength given to a planet by virtue of its motion, what type of movement it is, and software like Jagannatha Hora allows you to find the speed of a planet. So, when it comes to retrograde planets, it is just about speed and nothing else. And you know how speed is so important, or movement is so important in any day-to-day activity. If you look at people who stuck to the same spot not moving, you hate them, you say get up and start moving. So, in sports you want you appreciate that those people who are the fastest are able to quickly go back, like in the case of Muhammad Ali. You will see when there is a situation where at least 10 to 15 punches are hurled at him by the opponent, but even without lifting his hands he just goes back. So, he is not being hit just because he has the ability to go quickly backwards, and this is a kind of strength. A retrograde planet is nothing more than just a different kind of speed, and you will have to learn what are you will have to know everything about the average speed of a planet. In the next episode of this series, I will be actually giving you more information on these things, but in this video I wanted to make it as simple, without maths, without any calculations. I just wanted to give you the basic way to use the knowledge of retrograde planets. So, it is basically when it goes back, it is quite different. So, because it is different, or because as I told you that if something goes back, its intention is to quickly go forward again. So, there is some lot of movement happening, and there is some purpose, there is a focus. A very important aspect of the movement of retrogression is people think that, let us say, a planet in its orbit goes like this, and in retrogression goes exactly like this, back and forth. It actually does not go like this. So, you will find that it's almost like, very strange path. It will take like this, and then it will go like this. So, it is actually trying to say there is something here. Another important use of retrograde planets is when it comes to the longevity calculations, the lifespan calculations. So, you have very lengthy, very confusing set of rules for finding the lifespan of a person. It runs to several pages in the textbook, but since this is just we are covering only the basics of retrograde planets, I would like to introduce the concept of or the role of retrograde planet when it comes to calculating the lifespan. Every planet is allotted a basic number of years for in the calculation of lifespan, and if it is exalted is not, it is not everywhere a planet is exalted. Whenever we say exalted, it is the exact point of exaltation, like Jupiter will be exactly it will be in exaltation, which is called deep exaltation, at 5 degrees. So, the moment it crosses 5, it is no more in what is called the Paramocha point. So, as it goes, if the planet is exactly at Paramocha point, then the said planet will give you the maximum allotted number of years for a particular planet, and then as it goes towards debilitation, the number of years allotted will actually decrease. It will decrease so much that by the time it reaches debilitation, which is the opposite side in Makara, Capricorn 5 degrees, it will come to the lowest point. In such situations, Jupiter will give you just half of what has been allotted in the Ayurveda calculations. Now, here comes the rule about retrograde planets. In all these calculations, the retrograde planets are not subject to any reduction of the longevity. So, this is the third most important point of the practical use of retrograde planet, is that retrograde planets will not reduce in any way. It is like immune to any reduction of the allotted number of years in terms of lifespan. More number of retrograde planets actually mean that you will have longer lifespan according to the calculations. So, in conclusion, I would say that the manifestations of the planet, the order in which it manifests, whether it happens in the first beginning of the dasha or antardasha, or in the middle portion or at the end, is largely dependent on whether the planet is in direct motion or retrograde or in retrograde motion. That is the first point. And 2 is a planet that is retrograde always is stronger. So, in terms of Shadbala, you should expect, if a planet is retrograde, you will see there is a great improvement in the strength. You can test it out by looking into a software like Jagannatha Hora. Just watch the Shadbala of Jupiter before it gets retrograde, and see after it gets retrograde, the strength will actually start going up. So, that is one way to prove that retrograde planets is actually contributing to the basic strength. And the third one is in terms of lifespan calculations, a retrograde planet actually gives you more lifespan from that particular planet that is retrograde. Other than this, treat retrograde planet as it is, as you would like to treat other planets. There is no other difference, but whether it is good or bad, use the same idea on how, whatever knowledge you have about how to find whether a planet is good or bad, even if it is in direct motion. The same rule will apply to retrograde planets also. There is nothing different about that. Now, the proof for this is that you can go through the entire Parasara text where he has covered the Vimshotri dasha. There are questions like, is the planet debilitated? Is the planet in 6, 8 and 12? Is the planet in 1, 4, 7, 10? Is it in 5, 9? Is it exalted? Is it debilitated? And is it in Mula Trikona? Is it the lord of the 2nd house, 7th house? You have lots of questions like this, but not just one question throughout, starting from Sun Mahadasha up to Venus Mahadasha, the entire 9 into 9 combinations, 9 dashas into 9 antardashas, which is 81 different types of dashas and antardasha, not one word about is the planet retrograde, then I will give you a different result. Maharshi Parasara has not said that. So, the actual result is not altered, it is only in matters of strength there is an alteration. Now, coming back to sage Bhrigu Sutra, where an extensive information on what if the sun is in the first house, sun is in the second house, third house, and then it goes on through all the planets in different houses. You go through all the text there and you will not find one word where it says if the planet is Vakra, if it is in Vakra Gati, then reverse the order, reverse the prediction, nothing is given. So, I am sure you have lots of doubts, and whatever your doubts, please mention them in the comment section. We have come to the end of this video. In case you have any doubts, please type them out in the comment section, and whenever I find the time, I'll answer them for you. And see you soon in my next video.